What if the moment you see through someone is the exact moment they become most dangerous? What if exposure doesn't end the game, it escalates it? And what if the greatest strength you could have isn't confrontation, but clarity? There's a moment sharp, electric when the mask slips. When someone toxic suddenly realizes you've caught on, you're no longer swayed by their charm, flattery, or false concern. You see the game, you see the manipulation in motion, and now they know you know. That's when everything shifts. The tactics move from subtle to surgical, from sweet to strategic. You're not imagining the shift in energy. You've entered psychological warfare. But here's what the Stoics knew, and what most forget. You don't have to meet that moment with rage or fear. You don't have to fight fire with fire. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca faced betrayal, deception, and manipulation at the highest levels of power, yet they mastered the art of holding their souls steady in the eye of the storm. In this video, we're going to break down 6 specific behaviors that manipulators use when they realize the mask is off, and exactly how to meet each one with stoic clarity, strength, and calm. This isn't about revenge. It's about protecting your peace, sharpening your awareness, and refusing to be played. If you've ever been used, betrayed, or gaslight, if you've ever watched someone shift the second they knew they couldn't fool you anymore, this video is for you. Like, comment, share, and subscribe if you want to keep this kind of practical wisdom in your corner. Let's get into the first move. They try to flip the narrative. The moment a manipulator sees you've seen through them, they don't retreat, they double down. One of the first tactics they'll use is to flip the story. They know the illusion has collapsed. The charm failed. The mask cracked. And instead of owning the truth, they scramble to rewrite it. Suddenly, you're not the one who caught their lie, you're the one overreacting. You're being too sensitive, too dramatic, or even accused of imagining things. They slip into the role of victim tears, confusion, gentle concern, designed to shake your confidence. It's not just denial, it's strategy. This move is about shifting the power dynamic back in their favor. It's about making you doubt yourself just enough for them to stay in control, not just of the situation, but of how others perceive it. Because here's the trick. They're not only gaslighting you, they're discrediting your insight before it gains momentum. And the reason it works is simple: it hits where you're soft. Your desire to be fair, your need to avoid conflict, your instinct to give the benefit of the doubt. Most good people don't want to accuse. They want understanding, resolution, peace. Manipulators weaponize that. They lean on your empathy, your hesitation to judge, and your emotional intelligence. That's when danger slips in quietly, when you start defending what you know just to be believed. But this is where Stoic wisdom becomes your anchor. Stoicism isn't about passivity, it's about precision. The Stoics valued truth, but they also knew the emotional cost of constantly trying to prove it. Marcus Aurelius didn't waste time arguing with liars. He chose to live in a way that made lies irrelevant. In his words, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I'll gladly change. But if not, I'll keep walking my path." That's the mindset you need when someone tries to distort your reality. Instead of fighting their fiction, stay steady in your truth. Let them twist. Let them spin. Your silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. So instead of reacting, you remain grounded. Let them twist the story all they want. Your truth doesn't need a spotlight, it just needs consistency. When you stop feeding the drama, you take away its air. That's not avoidance, it's strategy. The moment you disengage from the chaos, their fire begins to suffocate. They thrive on your reactions, your confusion, your emotional investment. Remove those, and you remove their control. But make no mistake, this doesn't mean it won't hurt. Being misunderstood cuts deep. Being blamed for seeing clearly can feel infuriating. But Stoicism reminds us that pain is not always a signal that something is wrong sometimes. It's simply a sign that something matters. And when something matters, you don't protect it with rage. You protect it with discipline. You hold your ground by remembering one simple truth. You are not responsible for how others twist the narrative. You are only responsible for how you live yours. So let them call you dramatic. Let them call you paranoid. The ones who truly know your character will see the truth over time, and the ones who don't, they were never going to anyway. But that's just the first move in the manipulator's playbook. When flipping the narrative no longer works or becomes too exhausting, they often move on to a tactic even more unsettling, pretending nothing ever happened. This next move isn't explosive. It's subtle, almost polite. Suddenly they act like everything is fine. No mention of the past, no apology, no ownership. Just a casual, "Hey, how are you?" in your inbox or a heart emoji on your latest post. They try to slip back into your life like nothing ever went wrong. This isn't awkwardness or denial, it's calculated. It's a test. They're watching to see if you'll fall for it. Will you laugh like before? Reply like before? Let your guard down like nothing happened? They want to know if their image is still intact in your eyes. Because if you engage without pause, they win. Not because they've changed, but because you've softened, and that's all they need to slide back into control. This tactic works because it preys on your best qualities, your empathy, your desire to be fair, your reluctance to hold a grudge. Let's be honest, most good people don't want conflict. They want peace. They want to believe others can change. Manipulators know this, and they use it. They bank on your emotional intelligence, on your ability to see the gray in people. But that's where the danger creeps in when you start doubting what you know, simply because someone is pretending to be kind. Once again, this is where Stoicism steps in with quiet strength. The Stoics weren't passive, they were calculated. They understood the value of peace, but not the kind built on illusion. Marcus Aurelius didn't waste time debating with those committed to falsehood. He chose to live in a way that rendered lies meaningless. His focus wasn't on proving the truth, it was on embodying it. So when someone who's hurt you returns with smiles but no accountability, you don't need to be harsh, but you do need to be clear. You don't need to slam the door, but you do need to stand in it. Don't rush to reconnect. Observe. Let their actions, not their words, do the talking. That's what discernment looks like. Not bitterness, not pettiness, but choosing not to be fooled by familiarity. And if guilt begins to creep in for holding that boundary, remind yourself, forgiveness is about releasing the weight, not erasing the lesson. You can move on without pretending the harm never happened. You can be kind without being naive. That's what the Stoics would tell you. Your peace is too valuable to be risked on performance. Trust isn't owed, it's earned. And some people gave up their chance to earn it the moment they chose deception. So when charm fails and their warm facade doesn't draw you back in, many manipulators shift again, this time into the shadows. If their pretense doesn't work, they don't stop. They pivot. And often, what comes next is even more dangerous. Silent sabotage. When someone toxic realizes you've truly seen behind their mask, it shakes them. Their control depended on your confusion, your doubt, your silence. Now that those are gone, what's left is fear of being exposed, rejected, or forgotten. That fear often doesn't come out as apology. It comes out as something quieter and far more corrosive, undermining you behind closed doors. Not to your face, never in plain sight. Instead, they whisper. They distort your words, misrepresent your intentions, paint subtle pictures of you as unstable, unpredictable, or difficult. It's never a full-blown attack, it's erosion. It's small comments like, "I'm just worried about them," or "They've been acting kind of different lately," harmless on the surface. But those remarks plant seeds of doubt in the minds of people around you. It's a strategy. They poison the well without looking like they've touched it. They craft a narrative where they're the concerned observer while you're quietly cast as the problem. And the worst part? You often don't even know it's happening until one day someone starts treating you differently. The invitations stop coming, conversations feel colder, people you trusted grow distant. That's when it hits you, the damage has already taken root. And your first instinct might be to defend yourself, to set the record straight, to match fire with fire. You want to call them out, to shout your truth louder than their lies. But here's the danger. The moment you enter that fight, you're playing by their rules. You've stepped into their arena. And in that arena, even your honesty can be twisted. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your greatest weapon. Seneca wrote that the true measure of a strong mind is its ability to rise above insults, not because it's blind to them, but because it refuses to be ruled by them. You don't need to match their tactics. You don't need to chase rumors. You live in such alignment with your values that their lies can't stand the test of time. Let your character do what words never could reveal, who you really are. That doesn't mean you stay silent out of fear. It means you speak with precision. You respond with clarity. But you don't chase every whisper. The Stoics understood something modern life forgets. Reputation is never fully within your control. What is within your control? Your actions, your integrity, the way you show up when no one's looking. So when you feel the sting of being misrepresented, when you know you're being painted in the wrong light, don't crumble. Don't lash out. Let your life speak louder than any lie ever could. In time, the gap between who you are and what they say will grow too wide to ignore. Some people will fall away, those who were too quick to believe what's easy. But those who matter, those who truly see you, will remain. And they'll see the truth not because you shouted it, but because you lived it. That's the Stoic path. Not revenge, not panic. Just quiet, relentless alignment. And when their quiet sabotage doesn't bring you back, when your stillness speaks louder than their spin, that's when they often make their next move. A softer mask. A new performance. This time, they claim to have changed. So when the whispers fail and your clarity remains unshaken, many manipulators pivot to their final disguise reinvention. You may feel the urge to explain yourself, to correct the lies, to defend your name. You want the world to know the truth. But here's the trap. The moment you step into that arena, you're already playing by their rules. You're reacting, not leading. And that's where Stoicism offers something far more powerful, a strategy rooted in strength, not emotion. Seneca once said the true sign of a great mind is its ability to rise above insults, not because it's weak, but because it refuses to be ruled by them. You can't win an argument with someone who thrives on distortion. You can't outspeak someone whose goal isn't understanding, but manipulation. But you can do something far stronger. You can live in a way that their lies simply can't hold. When your actions are consistent, your values unshaken, and your energy steady, the gap between who you are and what they say becomes impossible to ignore. That doesn't mean silence out of fear. It means choosing your words with intention. It means responding with clarity, but refusing to be dragged into the noise. The Stoics taught that reputation isn't fully in our control. Character is. Choices are. How we show up when no one's watching, that's the part that's yours. So, if you're being undermined behind the scenes, don't panic. Let your public presence speak the truth. Let your consistency dissolve the rumors. Let time do what reaction can't. Because truth doesn't need to race, it only needs to last. It reveals itself in patterns, not in performances. Yes, you may lose people along the way, those who judged too fast, those who found comfort in gossip. But what you keep is worth far more. Your peace, your integrity, your ability to look in the mirror without regret. Don't waste your strength managing the opinions of people who never truly saw you. Use that energy to stay aligned with who you know you are. But be aware when the quiet tactics fail and they realize you won't crawl back. Some manipulators won't escalate, they'll evolve, or at least pretend to. Not through confrontation or conflict, but through reinvention. This is when they show up with a new version of themselves. Softer, kinder, more self-aware. They'll say all the right things, offer support, maybe even apologize something they never did before. But the question is it growth or bait? Because when destruction doesn't work, deception is often next. They don't deny anymore, they pivot. And suddenly, they sound more mature, more reflective. They might say things like, "I've been thinking about what you said," or "I want to do better." And part of you wants to believe it. Maybe you've even been waiting for it. You see their words, their behavior, and for a moment, it feels like the version of them you hope for is finally showing up. Maybe they really changed. Maybe this time will be different. But this is where your hope must be tempered by clarity. Because real change isn't about what someone says when they feel exposed, it's about what they consistently do when they think no one's watching. Because manipulators don't evolve through true growth, they adapt by recalibrating what gets them access. If guilt stops working, they switch to charm. If that fails, they try remorse. Not because they've changed, but because they're testing what still controls you. This is where Stoicism doesn't dismiss your hope, it sharpens it. Marcus Aurelius once warned us not to become like those who've harmed us. The best revenge, he said, is not to be like your enemy. That means when someone pulls emotional bait, you don't bite. The Stoic doesn't lash out, doesn't chase a new tone with old emotion. They don't melt at the first sign of softness. They observe. They track patterns, not moments. Because real change isn't loud. It doesn't walk in with a spotlight. It shows up in silence, over time, in humility, in consistency, in self-correction, and most importantly, it never demands instant trust. I once watched someone close to me fall into this very trap. After months of being emotionally dismissed, minimized, and manipulated, she finally pulled away. She reclaimed her space, her clarity, and instantly, the person who had once mocked her boundaries flipped. Suddenly, he praised her strength. He offered support. He talked about going to therapy. He used the very language she once begged him to understand, mirroring her phrases word for word. It felt sincere. She softened. Slowly, cautiously, she let him back in. But not long after, the pattern returned. The subtle jabs, the quiet undermining, the same pressure, just wrapped in new packaging. What looked like growth had only been a performance just long enough to regain emotional access. She hadn't been welcomed with honesty. She'd been baited. And that's what makes false change so dangerous. It's not explosive. It's calculated. It gives you just enough hope to make you lower your guard. And once you do, the cycle resets. That's why Stoicism tells us, trust your instincts, but run them through the filter of reason. Be courteous, be kind, but keep your emotional doors locked until time proves the pattern. Watch for consistency, not charisma. Real change doesn't need to announce itself, it proves itself. And even then, you are under no obligation to rebuild what was broken. Forgiveness isn't an invitation, it's a release. But for those who can't bait you with charm or remorse, there's still one move left. And it's often the most dangerous. It doesn't come loud or fast. It comes quiet, it comes slow, and it comes with subtle pressure. When charm no longer wins you back, manipulators test your boundaries not with force, but with a soft push. They don't storm the gates. They tap the walls. They start small, maybe a casual, thinking of you, message, or a vague comment on your social media. Something that seems innocent, forgettable. But it's not. It's a probia calculated move to see if your guard is still up, or if it's safe for them to inch back in. Just like the manipulator who adapts through charm or guilt, some choose a quieter strategy, testing your boundaries gently, inch by inch, hoping you won't notice until you've already let them in. These subtle moves may seem harmless, a light-hearted emoji reply, a vague comment on your post, but they're far from random. They're calculated taps on the emotional glass, meant to see if your defenses will hold or fracture. Each interaction is a measurement, a quiet probe to figure out whether your boundary is rooted in conviction or just a temporary emotional wall. If you respond, they interpret it as permission. If you explain, they take it as negotiation. If you ignore them, they escalate slightly, just enough to provoke, never enough to look aggressive. That's the danger of this stage. It doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like a test, or worse, like a coincidence. And because it's subtle and familiar, many people slip right back into cycles they thought they had finally broken. Not because the manipulator made a grand gesture, but because they used the oldest tactic in the book: familiarity. Sometimes being polite feels easier than standing firm. Sometimes replying feels less cold than staying silent. But in the world of Stoic philosophy, boundaries are not just spoken, they are embodied. They're not about what you say once, they're about how you live repeatedly. Epictetus said it clearly: what we control is not the behavior of others, but our own response. You can't stop people from knocking on the door, but you can choose not to open it. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. I once witnessed this in someone named Jordan. She had endured months of gaslighting and emotional manipulation from someone close. Eventually, she reached a point of clarity and peace. She drew a Lenino more contact, and she upheld it with grace and calm. The manipulator didn't resist. They didn't fight. They waited. Weeks later, a simple message arrived. Short, casual, almost forgettable. just enough to reopen the door. Then came a shared joke in a group thread. Then a mutual friend saying, "They asked about you, said they miss your energy." It was all so casual, so smooth, but Jordan saw through it. Every word was a test, every emoji a hook. And for a moment, she almost responded, not because she forgot the pain, but because she didn't want to seem heartless. That's how this works. Manipulators prey on your strengths, your kindness, your empathy, your desire to be fair. Stoicism doesn't tell you to be harsh. It tells you to be grounded, to be unmoved by bait. You don't need to explain your silence. You don't need to justify your distance. Your peace is not cruelty, it is clarity. Your firm, quiet boundary is not weakness, it is wisdom. And the longer you uphold it, the clearer your message becomes. I no longer entertain your chaos. Still, not everyone will accept that message with grace. When they realize charm, guilt, and silence no longer work, manipulators often pivot once again. If they can't influence your perspective anymore, they turn to shape how others see you. They begin to discredit you behind your back, isolating you socially instead of engaging you directly. And that's exactly where we're headed next, into the terrain of defamation and exclusion, and how Stoic wisdom equips you to endure and rise above it. But when direct manipulation no longer works and your silence holds strong, some people turn to one final move: smearing your name behind the scenes. If they can't control your choices, they'll try to control your image. Quietly, strategically, they begin to reshape how others perceive you. It's not a frontal attack, it's erosion. A slow, calculated effort to make you look unstable, distant, or problematic. They don't scream lies, they whisper distortions. They frame themselves as the calm voice of reason, saying things like, "I'm just worried," or "I hope they're okay," while subtly painting you as irrational or hard to handle. They position themselves as peacemakers, when in truth, they're fueling chaos. This tactic works because it doesn't look like warfare, it looks like concern. And that's what makes it so dangerous. You begin to doubt your own footing. Invitations start to fade, people grow quieter, and opportunities suddenly feel just out of reach. You start to wonder, am I imagining this? You're not. It's real. And it's designed to isolate you, not to destroy you instantly, but to wear you down over time, to make you feel alone enough, uncertain enough, that you might cave. This is where the Stoic mindset becomes your shield. Your impulse may be to fight back, to explain, to correct every lie, but that's exactly the battlefield they want you: one, exhausted, emotional, reactive. Marcus Aurelius warned that the one thing worth clinging to is the commitment to live truthfully and rightly, and to be patient with those who don't. That's not weakness, it's strength. You don't need to run a campaign to win support. You don't have to debunk every rumor. You simply keep showing up in alignment with your values. Let your actions do the talking. Let time expose the difference between truth and illusion. Because real reputation, the kind that matters, doesn't need defending. It needs consistency. And your consistency becomes the contrast that unmasks the performance. The people meant for you will see it. The rest? You never needed their approval anyway. That's the Stoic's clarity: not seeking control, but holding truth. It won't earn you applause today, but it will protect your peace tomorrow. And yes, it's hard. The silence can feel unbearable. The betrayal stings, especially when it comes from someone who once claimed to care. But within that pain is a powerful freedom. You realize you don't need to manage other people's perceptions anymore. You just need to manage your own integrity. And that's something they can't touch. The Stoic doesn't waste time on revenge. They choose alignment. You live with such clarity, such truth, that anything rooted in lies eventually collapses on its own. No smear response, no dramatic reply, just quiet, unwavering discipline. That's how you win it just over them, but within yourself. And when all the manipulation ends, when their tactics no longer hold power, what remains is something rare: freedom. A peace that doesn't require performance, proof, or permission. That's the reward of seeing through deception and standing still while it falls apart. If you've ever found yourself in this kind of battle, if you felt isolated, know this: you're not alone and you're far from powerless. The ancient wisdom of Stoicism still works. It's more than a philosophy, it's a form of survival. You've stood your ground. You've seen through the masks, the tactics, the quiet manipulation hiding behind fake smiles and hollow concern. And from that moment when you stop falling for the performance, you reclaim something powerful. Your clarity. That's your rebellion. And it doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to argue. It simply stands, calm, centered, unshakable. That's the strength the Stoics understood. In a world that thrives on confusion, staying clear is an act of power. In a culture built on chaos, peace becomes your greatest shield. And when lies surround you, your integrity is the one thing they can never touch. If you've been there, if you felt the shift when someone suddenly changed the second they realized you were no longer fooled, drop a comment below. Your story matters, and your voice helps others see that they're not alone. Because every time we speak our truth, every time we choose understanding over outrage, we move one step closer to real freedom. If this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, hit subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone walking through the fire of manipulation, thinking they're crazy for trusting their instincts. Let them know they're not losing their mind. They're just finally seeing clearly. That's the beauty of waking up. The longer you walk this path of strength, the more unshakable you become. And if you're ready to go deeper, explore our Stoic wisdom. Mastering Emotions and Inner Strength playlist. It's packed with powerful insights to help you build mental clarity, emotional control, and spiritual resilience. This is the Stoic room where we rise without rage, fight without noise, and win without losing ourselves. Stay sharp, stay grounded, and above all, stay stoic. I'll see you in the next one.